Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett. They were kicking around this idea, Greg, and I know you've written eloquently on this. Mueller, should he be in the job he's in?
Right.
I've talked to a lot of people that even if you concur with the view that there are a lot of glaring issues that make it unlikely he should be in that job. The train has left the station. The indictments are being handed out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, to some extent, that's true. But nobody ever had legal standing to challenge the appointment of Robert Mueller as special counsel until today and the indictments that have been handed down. And I would expect the lawyers for Manafort and Gates to make that challenge, that he was illegally appointed. Because if you look at the special counsel law, you retain a special counsel to investigate a crime or crimes.
Right.
Well, there is no such crime of collusion except in antitrust. You're allowed to talk to a Russian. It's not a crime, even in a campaign. So the Donald Trump Jr. meeting with a Russian lawyer, perfectly legal. It says so on the Federal Election Commission's website. And now we learn that this fellow Papadopoulos, George Papadopoulos, has pled guilty to lying to the FBI about meeting with Russians. If he just told the truth, he wouldn't be in any trouble because it's not a crime to talk to the Russians. And they didn't charge him with the underlying so-called offense of talking to Russians, colluding with Russians in a campaign, because there's no statute.
But then it gets to be, are we covering up something? Or right, that gets to be an issue. Are we not talking about things or preventing people from talking about things as a result or influencing an investigation? Isn't that the next step or stage these things go to?
Well, you and I were talking a moment ago about Uranium One and the conflict that poses for Robert Mueller.
Because he was FBI director at the time.
He was FBI director at the time. And there is pretty good evidence now that he and Rod Rosenstein, who was U.S. attorney, they were in charge of that Russian extortion, bribery, money laundering
Rod Rosenstein chose Mueller to be this investigator, right?
And it looks like they covered it up. They had a legal duty to tell Congress, which would have stopped the sale. They didn't do it. And
covered it up or dropped the ball, you can admit.
Yeah,
right?
More like covered it up. I mean, you don't forget something like extortion, bribery, money laundering.
What if it's being investigated now after the fact and it turns out we'll get details of that? If we don't, then it's all the more glaring to you, right?
It absolutely is. How can Americans have confidence in Robert Mueller and his investigation if they now know that he covered up illegality that would have stopped the sale of Uranium One?
Does it bother you that no one seems to think that's going anywhere fast? The whole idea that Mueller goes, maybe owing to the fact that this thing has accelerated to the point that...
Congress has called for a second special counsel to investigate Uranium One and the millions of dollars in payments to the Clintons and their foundation at or before the same time as her approval of the deal. So I think it's just the beginning for that.
So when people testify on that, is it your sense that Mueller then is forced into addressing this? And if he doesn't address it, it further impinges him.
I think he will be forced to address it. In fact, Congress may demand that he talk about it. The confidential informant has now been released by the Attorney General to speak. He'll be interviewed. And I've talked to his lawyer, who says he can connect the dots to Hillary Clinton and demonstrate there was a cover-up by Mueller and others.
All right, back to Manafort, and of course the White House briefing minutes away here, but what are we looking at now? I mean, with 12-count indictment, I mean, obviously the hope is if you're trying to get bigger fish or others, I mean, that you can get him to throw other names in the mix here.
But look at it, the Manafort-Gates indictments are all basically tax fraud, tax evasion.
Right.
Business dealings that predate the Trump campaign. And there's no mention in the indictment of Trump or Russia or collusion.
Right.
So a good day for the president in that regard. Not a good day for Manafort and Gates, as you pointed out earlier. But the Papadopoulos thing is going to be more difficult for the White House to explain. But again, they need to point out that it's okay to talk to Russians in a campaign.
Or I should say that Papadopoulos' lawyers are talking right now. It is in the best interest of our clients, George Papadopoulos, that we refrain from commenting on George's case. We'll have an opportunity to comment on George's involvement when called upon. by the court at a later date. We look forward to telling all of the details of George's story at that time. But the feeling seems to be that this leads to, getting to others, does it?
Yeah. But first, you have to find a crime, a statute. Where is it? What is it?
Well, in his case, he lied, right? Isn't that?
Yeah, it's always the
right.
cover-up. If he just told the truth, he'd be okay. But, show me the statute that says talking to a Russian in a political campaign is a crime.
But what about influencing an investigation? I always hear, Greg, whether it's the president or others, well, he was talking to me about an ongoing investigation and seemingly hinting that we should stop it or cease and desist. Is that interference? Is that obstruction?
Could be obstruction of justice. Sure. And Comey may have obstructed justice in the Hillary Clinton case.
So let me ask you, the president commenting to someone, why don't you go light on this guy? Is that obstruction?
No, it is not. Obstruction requires a lie, a threat, or a bribe. Even Comey admits none of that exists here. Comey further told in a letter to his colleagues, he told them that the president has the legal right, the constitutional right to fire him. So where's the obstruction here? I mean, just saying, I hope you can find your way to go light on this guy because he's a great American and a general and he served the country well.
That in and of itself,
that's not obstruction of justice. It has to be something more. Hoping and wishing that somebody is cleared is not obstructing justice.
Someone was telling me, too, Greg, that if someone wants to make an issue of the president volunteering to pay the legal fees of a lot of his people who've been ensnared in this, that is an issue, is it?
Well, he doesn't want to do that, and I'm sure he would be counseled not to do that because that would be arguably an attempt to influence a witness, so you should never do that.
All right, but he did. He made the offer to pay upwards of $425,000, whatever it was, in legal fees. Should he rescind that? Should he make clear? Or if Sanders asked this at the briefing, should he just say, no, the president was just speaking as a friend and didn't want to do this?
That's exactly what he should say. He should not offer, nor should he pay. There, you're sort of dangling your foot over the legal lines of fairness and objectivity.
All right. Lines you never cross.
Never.
Never.
Not once.
All right. Gregg Jarrett, thank you very much.